All right. Happy New Year, folks. Welcome to another episode where Mike Rizzi and I are working on Mike's Song Things app.
Happy New Year.
So, we haven't worked on this since last year.
I know.
Sorry, I had to say that.
Not as funny as Jira.txt.
Well,
But
nothing
nice.
will ever be as funny
Yeah,
as that.
yeah.
So, last time we had created this repository-like thing, and we got it to work where it at least in memory, stored all of the information. We were able to restore it from that in-memory repository, and we proved with our last test that it actually saved additions to that in-memory thing. And where we left off is there's still some feature envy code smells that we'll probably start taking care of. And then we can look at our list, but I think we could possibly look at actually persisting, or we can check out Jira and see what else we have, or look at our stories.
I think actually persisting would be good.
Yeah.
Get
Hey,
that.
Phil, Happy New Year to you. Yeah.
Happy New Year. Yeah, good to
So,
get that vertical slice. A little bit more vertical, or a little more lower down.
so yeah, so what you've got on the screen, that was the last test we got. One thing we could do is we could look at the Git history, right? So sometimes it's great to have a breadcrumb where we've got a failing test where we know exactly what to do next, but we didn't do that last time. That's fine. But we can also, so the way I kind of work is like when I'm trying to remind myself, I'm either looking at what's the last failing test I have, or if it's not really clear what the next step is, it's like, well, what have we done so far? So why don't you bring up the Git history? You can do that with Alt-9.
9. Alt-9, not Alt F9.
Right. I think it's Alt-9. Yeah, there it is. And you can rearrange it so that center part, the blue part, is bigger or wider.
Nope.
Whoop.
I was hoping to make it full. It doesn't have a takeover completely.
If you double click in that gray area that you're in, that will maximize.
Oh, that'll do it. Okay.
Yeah. And if you double click again, it will
Goes back.
restore it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so song service load song upon startup. We did the prepare refactoring. It now persists, and then we start to fix some feature envy, and so that's where we left off. Do some more of that. Yeah, so it looks good.
Cool.
So an excellent question. How to detect code smell feature envy and to fix it? Well, to detect it, we'll take a look at it and see what about it tells us that we've got feature envy, and then you'll see how we fix it. Generally, you fix it by putting it where it seems to belong, but we'll look at those steps.
And I guess when we find it, we could explain what feature envy is.
Yeah. Happy New Year, Kleich, or Kleich. I'm not sure how you want to pronounce that. So why don't we go to the song service at the bottom, because that's actually where the feature envy shows up. So if we look at line 29, that's our feature envy.
Ah.
So why don't you highlight 29 there? So what tells us that this is feature envy?
The immediate hint is you start seeing the dot something when you're not working with streams.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, we're adding a song to the repository. The repository isn't adding the song to itself.
Yeah, and I think what's confusing or what might not be completely obvious is what does the get song repository do? So if you click on just the get song repository and then you hit,
Did you have
I
something
can,
else?
you can do,
Oh, right, the control.
is it Control P? I don't know what it is on Windows offhand.
I think it's Control Shift I is what you're saying.
No, Control P. It's Control P.
Control P.
Yep. Oh no, you're right. I actually wanted the other thing, which
Control
was
Shift
that.
I, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That.
And so
So
we can
what?
see this returns a list. So the name is kind of awkward. But for those of you who watched us create this, this came from the fact that we did what was called an extract delegate. So originally we had the list inside of the service, and then we extracted it to its own class. But in a sense, all we did was put it in another class, but we didn't change any sort of encapsulation. We didn't really
We didn't really encapsulate it, but
we certainly did not encapsulate it, even though it's in its own class and is represented there. Uh, Actually, why don't we jump over to the song repository itself?
yeah.
And let's scroll all the way to the top. Yeah. So what we can see is we can see that the song repository has a private field, song repository, which is our collection class. But because we've got both getters and setters, it's not encapsulated. So just because a field is private doesn't mean that it's encapsulated.
Which a great example is you can call add on the return from line 16 and change the object without
Exactly.
the object actually knowing it got changed.
Right.
That's feature envy.
Yeah. And so there is this thing called ask don't tell, or some variation of that always confuses me, because I always think of command methods as telling an object and asking as a query. So to me, that phrase never made any sense to me. And I know it's a common phrase and some people understand it, but it just never fits my brain. And so I always just think about it as basically don't modify fields you don't own.
I just remembered a phrase that's different than ask don't tell that maybe is more clear, but is slightly what is the word? Double entendre.
Okay.
And that's like don't let anyone touch your privates.
Uh-huh.
So
Yes.
like don't let the outside world change whatever you have that's private in your class.
Right. And to me, there's a whole area around how to do that, and we're actually gonna see that. So one of the things that we'll want to do is basically fix this, and we'll encapsulate it. We'll look at how, and this is very much related to primitive obsession. So primitive obsession, I have a whole talk on that goes into this stuff deeply. And I think it's one of my favorite talks because it pulls together this idea of encapsulation and meaningful domain terms and things like that. So I'll post a link to that. But here we took the step of pulling it out into a separate class because we wanted this new class to be in charge of the list. And what we want to do is we want to now protect it. And so one way we can look for feature envy is pretty much look for, is anybody calling this get method and then doing something other than just looking at the list? Are they doing anything, any kind of logic or any kind of modification with the result of that get song repository? And if you hit Control B, we will see that yes, indeed, right there, somebody is asking for it and then modifying it directly. And that completely violates encapsulation. And the feature envy aspect is that we do want to add a song to it, but whose responsibility is it to take that song and put it in the list, that's in the wrong place. And so what we'll do is we'll move it to the right place. So let's jump to that. By that, I mean that.
Yep.
Yeah. And so this is one of the most common refactorings that I do is extract a method, isolate as necessary, and then use the move method refactoring. So let's do that. Let's extract that line to a method. And we want the whole line, so you can select the third expression. No, you were fine.
Oh.
Nope, nope.
Oh.
I want you to do it the other way.
Yeah. From here.
Yes. So now you can just down arrow twice to select the third expression because we want the whole thing.
Okay.
That's why I say it's you almost never have to do any kind of selections when you're doing refactorings.
As long as your cursor's in the right place.
As long as you're somewhere on the thing you want to refactor, yes. You
Right.
don't have to be you don't have to have it selected.
Sweet.
So now you can go ahead and hit enter. And now we have to think about, well, what do we want this method to be called? Probably just add. We can always
Interesting, it's doing a Boolean.
Yes, because the add method on a collection returns a Boolean. And so we'll have to fix the return value because it shouldn't return anything.
Okay. So add it is. What?
Nope. Try again.
I typed add. I must have.
So
enter tab,
if you you want to either hit escape or you want to hit I don't think tab will do it. I think you want to hit escape because right now it's auto completing the options, and then if you hit enter, it selects the first one.
Right. Let me try both. I'm gonna try tab first. Nope. Tab
Yeah, I didn't. So tab is still a complete.
Yeah. Add escape.
Yeah. And now you got to
now enter.
Right. Yeah. So the expressions list shows up if you don't select anything and you're in some kind of thing that could be extracted, then IntelliJ will say, which part of this do you want to extract? Because maybe you just wanted to extract the variable, or maybe you wanted to extract the variable and get SongRepository, or you maybe want to extract the whole thing like we did. Right. You can sort of like, you could select everything you want and just do extract method, and then it will do whatever you selected. Right. But I find it's fewer steps to just say extract method and then select, rather than select and then extract method. Right. And this is for sort of single line expressions. When you have multiple lines, then you obviously have to select what you're going to extract because it's not going to know. Or
right. It's not going to consider multiple lines.
Right. It won't consider multiple lines. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's pretty common. It used to be sort of a habit to select first and then run whatever refactoring, but over the years I've been training myself to not select at all and just let IntelliJ offer that, because it's not just extract method that it applies to a whole bunch of other refactorings. Let's fix the Boolean. We don't want Boolean, we just want a void.
Just do a manual.
Yeah. Although actually it offered, I wonder, since it's offering on the add, what's the alt enter quick fix on that?
Make method void.
That's what we want, because then it'll drop the return value.
Yep.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right, so that was step one, is you extract the behavior that you basically want to encapsulate, which is adding the song to the repository. What I do next, even though it's not necessary, but I find it makes the following step easier, is to take SongRepository here in this method and push it out to be a parameter. So not that, just the SongRepository.
Oh, sorry. My brain was thinking the other one. Yeah. go back to repository as the name for the parameter?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to matter, but sure. Yeah. All right. And so now we can do an F6 move on this. And we're going to move it to song repository, the first one. And so here's why this dialog can be confusing, is there are a bunch of different options. And this is basically saying, where do you want this behavior to go? Well, we don't want it to go to song because that makes no sense. Or makes little sense for a song to add itself to a repository. That's not where the behavior belongs. And one of the nice things about, notice that we sort of followed the trail from the get method. We said, who's calling this get method and doing something that they shouldn't do? So we basically followed it from there. So that's where we want to push that behavior. Since we came from song repository, that's where we're going to push the behavior. And then it's a question of, well, which song repository? Because there are two choices here. And we want the one that is the parameter. And that's why I push out the parameter to make this step more clear. So let's go ahead and refactor that. And so now we can see on line 29, we no longer have any kind of feature envy. We're basically saying, hey, song repository, add the song. I don't even know how you're tracking stuff. Do whatever you need to do.
Did we eliminate? Oh, wait, hold on.
Yep, go ahead.
So we're still in the repository. We still have this.
Yes, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
So our overall goal, a high level goal in song repository, is for us to eliminate as many of the usages of get, certainly any usages that are doing modifications to the getter. Let's go back to song repository. So our goal is to get rid of as many usages of the get song repository, and definitely 100% eliminate usages of the setter, of the set song repository. But we're focused on the getter, so we'll just sort of continue around that that cycle. And so if we look at the add song that got moved there at the bottom, we can see it's still calling the getter, but eventually the idea is we'll get rid of that getter. We may not be able to get rid of 100%. We'll have to see about that. So let's look at the other usages of get song repository. So besides the test, which will be an interesting thing, what else is using that? So let's go look at that usage. And so here we have, this isn't a feature envy problem. This is a bit of still not quite encapsulated, but that's not, to me, the real code smell here. The real code smell is a bit around, kind of feels a bit law of Demeter like, but the idea of why are we, this may be totally valid that we want to create the song searcher and just give it a list of song. But I think the idea is for the service not to be the intermediary here, and basically to have the song searcher. Well, actually, now I'm not sure. So, so what I was thinking is we would just pass in song repository, but actually song searcher is in our domain, which means song searcher should not have references to any kind of repository. So this is actually fine.
Is it the problem that we've named, that name of that method is get song repository?
Yeah, so that was something that was confusing earlier. So why don't we fix that, since it's confusing us now?
It was really returning the list of songs.
Yeah. So let's rename that. Let's call it all songs, because that's really what it is.
Question on that. Should we really be returning the list, or should we return a copy of the list?
Yes. So for now, we'll return the list. But there's once we finish up a couple of steps, we will want to return something else that is not certainly not this list. So Full Alpha asks, don't see the value of fixing the feature envy. So if we go to the song service class, and we go down to where we did the add. So now line 29 means we don't know what the implementation of the song repository is. We don't need to. Before we did, we asked the repository, give me a list of songs and I'm going to add it. So there are two problems with that. One is you have too much detail about the song repository and how it worked. The other is very much related to that, which is the song repository itself can't change because it doesn't know who's using it in this way that's sort of bypassing any knowledge that the song repository has, right? So when you talk about encapsulation, it means that it is protecting its data. And so if anybody can just stuff something in without the object itself knowing, it is not encapsulated. And I think of all of object-oriented programming, the most important thing by far is encapsulation. Inheritance, who cares about? Reusability, I don't care. Encapsulation is the main thing that I think about because that's what protects you from changing an implementation somewhere and having stuff break because some other object was doing something sort of through the back door.
I've seen a lot of bugs over the years caused by somebody else outside the object, you know, playing around with private variables, right?
Yep.
And it's like, how did that change? There's no method here changing it. It's because it wasn't truly encapsulated, which was sort of where we were before we stopped. We were talking about this does break encapsulation at the moment because
Yes.
it's returning a reference to this,
Yes.
and people could muck with it. And we're going to
Right.
fix that
We're going
at
to
the
fix that.
appropriate time. But hopefully that helps enough.
Yeah. And so again, the two factors of encapsulation is provide the behaviors that you want to allow callers to perform. So what are the intentions that we have? We want, hey, song repository, what is your job? Your job is not hold on to a list of songs. Your job is hold on to songs. I don't know how you hold on to it. I don't care how you keep track of it. I don't care if you write it out to files. I don't care if you store it in a database. I don't care if you keep it in memory. In a sense, all those are implementation details. So encapsulation helps us hide those implementation details so we can focus on what is the abstraction, what is it supposed to do. And by providing these very precise ways of how you change the repository, right? This is where command methods come in. Command methods say, this is the only way you change the state of this object. And ideally, they're methods that make sense from a domain or technical standpoint of what do we want this thing to do, and again separating what we want to do, the abstraction, from the implementation. Yes, we're about to get there. So let's go ahead and go into song service and let's rename our internal list.
Give me 1 second. Sorry, I was just my StreamYard just got in the way of something. There we go. Okay, so you were saying.
So let's go to the top of song service. Sorry, song repository. And let's rename that list actually to be songs. We're not going to rename anything.
Yeah, because we're going to.
Yeah, we're going to get rid of the setter and we're going to fix the getter.
Yeah.
Although it's not a getter anymore. Well, actually, it still is a getter.
At the moment, yeah.
Yeah. So let's go fix the getter and make it not a getter. So when I think of encapsulation, and I think of on objects like this, there are two types of methods. There are commands saying change something, and there are query methods that say give me information. If we're going to give information, there are a couple of heuristics that I have for doing so. One is almost never. In fact, I can't think of when there's any good case to return a reference to a variable directly. Though if it's a primitive, then there's no harm because primitives are in a sense unmodifiable from the outside. So we always want to return what's basically an unmodifiable view of that variable.
I'm just summarizing some of your stuff.
And so what we want to do is, so here we have a couple of choices for our all songs method, because we certainly do not want to return songs. If songs were just a string, it would be fine because it's a string and the caller can't modify it, right? So what we're protecting against is somebody from the outside changing our songs without going through the proper protocol, right? So I always think about objects have protocols. How do you interact with them? How do you talk to them? And if you change stuff behind the scenes, you're not following protocol, and that always ends up bad. So we could just return a copy of, and so we could say list.copy of.
I'm going to go back to my old.
Yep. So that's one way to do it. That's a sort of a necessary addition. So now this object is protected against sort of out of band, sideband, through the back door, whatever you want to call it, basically changing the data without going through the command methods. If you want to change the songs, you're supposed to go through the front door, follow protocol. You don't modify things directly. There's a problem though with this method, which is the return value and the return type, which a caller may see as being a list that they can modify. So yes, defensive coding is what I would consider a part of what we're talking about. It's not, but there's more than just being defensive about it. Defensive is in a sense saying, I'm going to write this code to make sure nobody can make a mistake. But I see it as a bigger issue. I'm not just trying to prevent people from making a mistake. That's just inappropriate, and I want to make sure people follow the rules. And so to me, that's a bigger issue, because there are multiple different ways we could deal with this. So making a copy, what's sometimes called a defensive copy, is one way we can solve the problem. But the other way we can solve the problem is we can decide we're going to return a different object. So right now, somebody calling all songs looks at the return value and says, oh, this must be all the songs in the repository. I can go get this and change it. And if they try to do that, that's going to be bad because it's actually not going to change the internal state of SongRepository. Yes. So there are, I always think of sort of this ladder of abstraction, and I'm stealing that term from something completely different, but we can say, all right, let's return a list of song. That's bad because it was a direct reference, so let's return a copy, but it's still a list of song. There's not much of an abstraction there. That might be fine. That might be as the best we can do. But I'm very uncomfortable with that because of the way it misleads the caller. So we can then move to, well, how about we return something that makes it obvious? This is a read-only view copy of information. So Java offers a couple of options. One is we return a stream. And what's nice about a stream is it makes it clear to the caller, at least folks who understand what streams are all about, that you're getting a read-only, unmodifiable, in a sense, view of what songs are in the song repository. But that doesn't raise the level of abstraction very much. So it makes it a bit more clear what you can expect, but it doesn't raise the level of abstraction. But that might be fine. On the other hand, you might want an object that represents all the songs in the repository. And so you might create a songs class. Except that would pretty much be a duplication of what song repository already does. And so this is where would a new class provide anything besides sort of another nice name than sort of a stream of song? And then we'd be looking at, well, okay, so songs would have still inside of it a list of songs. What else might it do? Well, no, that's you would add to it. It's like, well, wait, we already have such a thing. So you have to be careful of if you already have a good abstraction, and song repository, I think, is already, in a sense, the abstraction of keeping track of songs, then we don't need anything else. The other thing is we may not want to return songs. Maybe callers don't care about every single detail that the song object has. And so then we could perhaps return a song, songs view, or just songs that is just their, song titles or some subset of information. That might be useful as well, and that depends on sort of what callers are going to do with it. But I think the approach that we probably want to take here is not return a list, because that's misleading, but return a stream. So we'd want to look at who the callers are and say what's that going to do for us if we do that.
Internal.
So let's go to the internal, because let's fix that. So here we're now inside this thing, right? We pulled this code in from elsewhere, but now we're inside. So let's go ahead and inline that, but just that one, and keep the method. And yeah, so already, because we did that, we've got a problem. So let's fix it. So this method's allowed to directly access songs.
Right. Should I just manually fix it, or the
Yeah,
inline pulled the comments down too? But I can play.
yeah. Delete the comments, and just, you could even undo and just replace it with songs.
You mean
Literally just, yeah. Because usually I do the inlining before I do the protection stuff, and that's why I was a little taken aback at what happened.
I was like, what happened? It took me a second.
But this is what we want, right? So add internally can access the collection because it's inside the class, but does its job. And one way to think about this is, oh, this is great. So if I ever want to change how my songs are stored internally, no caller will have to change. That's the way you want to think about it, right? Again, sort of separating implementation. And that's what proper encapsulation does, is allow you to refactor your internals at will without worrying about breaking other stuff. All right, let's look at the other callers to that all songs method.
Okay. Actually, can we move up the constructor since it's here?
Sure. Yeah.
doing down there? So all songs. Test.
Yeah, so let's look at the test.
Actually, sorry, I jumped ahead. Song service.
But let's look at the test first.
Test first. Okay.
So if we changed all songs to return a stream instead of a list, a search A will handle that fine, so we won't have to worry about that. Speaking of tests, we haven't run our tests, have we?
I did it once at the beginning.
Yeah, but we haven't done it since we refactored. So let's run them again.
Yeah, and you want to do all?
Yeah, let's do all, just to be sure.
Shift. Keep doing Control Alt. Okay, they all passed.
All right, great. So let's now look at that other use, the last usage that we have to worry about of all songs, which is in our song service. So now we'd have to look at create song searcher. What does it take as a parameter?
You want the internal to jump to it?
No, that's fine. So it takes a list of song. Now it happens to convert it to an array anyway. So that would be a relatively straightforward refactoring to convert a stream to an array. So I think we're at the point where we could just return a stream, and then we'll manually fix up that method.
Okay. Do we do it by modifying the return and have it drive the, or is it all manual?
We can actually start it by on 21, instead of returning a list copy of, do return songs.stream. And then that'll force us to change the return type, which we can have IntelliJ do. So third option.
1, 2, 3. Ah, there it is, stream. Got it. Cool.
So I'm just copying a link for something. Okay. So now we should have just one compile error. And I expect it to be that method that we just saw in Song Searcher.
Where's the?
I basically, to force a compile, I basically just run tests. So let's run the IO free tests.
Yeah, I did Control Shift again. I really got to get the Alt on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so here. This is where I expected it to have problems.
Right. So now what we can do is we can go into the create song searcher method. The one that takes a list. And we can change its type from a list of song to a stream of song.
You do it through.
Just do it manually. And we're not going to save anything by doing a change signature.
Gotcha.
We could have done a quick fix from the caller, but we're here anyway. So.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was so busy trying to get. What was it again? I'm changing.
We're changing it to a stream.
Stream. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And amazingly enough, stream has a toArray method on it, which I know.
I was like,
I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if it had it. I wasn't sure if we were going to have to sort of switch it around and call arrays.toStream, but apparently stream has toArray as well, which is great. And so now run our tests. And let's see if we broke anything.
That was the IO free test. Should we run all?
No, I think that's sufficient. So, and by the way, I talk a lot about this process of what we just did in a talk, and I posted a link to a talk I did on primitive obsession, because to me that encapsulates a lot of this stuff about, no pun intended, I guess, encapsulation, and talks about sort of what are primitive obsession and feature envy, how they relate to each other. So it's a one of my favorite talks. So go and enjoy that one. Does it have to take an array? That's where we started. We start with varargs. So varargs are arrays, and so that's just been convenient. If at some point we decide we don't want that the primary way of creating the song searcher, we'll change it. But right now, I don't see a need for that, because I'm still unclear about what exactly we want. Sort of how do we want to initialize stream song searcher in the future? I can't predict that
Yeah.
just yet.
Well, we could, but it'd probably be wildly wrong.
Yeah, I was kind of saying, like, I can't predict it in a way that makes sense. I just don't have enough information.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where you I would love it if either arrays were hidden completely, and so we just never interact with them anymore. That would be nice, or at least if the var arg somehow was made to support lists and collections. Since we now have sequential collections, it would be nice if they could just use that. But arrays are very, very deeply implemented in the Java virtual machine, so I don't expect too much from that stuff. The main benefit for var args it makes it easier on the caller. But there are ways to sort of simulate that which are just annoying. So for example, all the list.of, so all the static collection creation methods basically use variants of var args, and it's just the way it is. All right, let's do a commit. We haven't done a commit in a while. We did a
Good Lord, yeah.
somewhat of a non-trivial refactor. So I think we've done a couple of things.
Sure. It's all under the rubric of continuing to fix feature envy, or no? Not
Yeah,
rubric.
but I'd like to be a little bit more specific.
Yeah.
So
Let's just take it out entirely. Okay.
So we fixed feature envy for adding songs to SongRepository. And fixed basically encapsulation. Yeah, haha. We fixed encapsulation of getting the songs from the song repository, or getting all songs from. Yep.
We
That's
need that.
basically it.
We don't really. Yep. Sounds good.
All right. So we can continue looking for feature envy. So if we go to song repository, and we've taken care of all songs, so that no longer either suffers from or contributes to feature envy. Now we can look at the set song repository method, because that's certainly, so of all the methods that I think are evil, setters are the most evil. Because you're basically, at least the way they're generally implemented, is you're basically saying, here's your field. I want you to set your field to this information. And it allows you to basically do whatever, and it very much leads to anemic data models that have just data and no behavior. Because if you're just going to set stuff, then why have anything else? And so though to use the magic word inject, you never want setter injection. You never want field injection. You never want to basically, in a sense, force your way on this object. You don't want to force information into an object. An object, it's not encapsulated if you can push information in and the object can't reject it. If the object can't say, no, that's not valid, then why have an object at all with methods? Just have public variables. And that's fine if you're programming in something other than object-oriented programming. But if you're doing object-oriented programming, the whole point is encapsulation is to protect the integrity. It's to allow the object to protect its own integrity. Yeah, even for testing purposes, that's sometimes you have to provide a setter. But to me, that's really a last resort. Often doing that on my way to repairing what's probably an underlying larger design problem. Because again, like being able to arbitrarily set something, it's one thing to put it in a constructor where you can't create the thing without it and you can't change it once it's created. But once it's created, the object needs to protect itself. And if it can't protect itself, even from tests, because who's going to say that it's only going to be called from tests, then you're just in a world of trouble.
Yeah, the chances of somebody going, oh look, there's a set method here, I can use it.
Yeah.
Not knowing that it was only for tests.
Yeah. And again, that to me, that's very separate from creation, right? So we have a bunch of create methods, and maybe those create methods, some of them are meant for tests. But then at least you've created something. You haven't modified something that was created through sort of a normal process, a typical process. So I think that's much safer. All right. So who's calling this setter?
Just us.
Oh, just us. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can fix that.
Inline?
Well, you can't inline it because if we look at line 16 and 17, what we really see is, in fact, what Doug's attitude was talking about. It's like we have a setter here only because we didn't have a constructor set up to take the list.
Hmm. So that means to make a constructor to take.
So we need to make a constructor that takes that list. Do we have any other constructors, or is that just the one, the default
just this default one?
Okay. I don't
manually do it, or is
I don't know that I don't know that there's any refactoring that will get us there any faster than just. So what I would do is still do some manual work, but I wouldn't. So one thing I've noticed about myself is I almost rarely write a method by hand. I don't write methods or constructors by hand. I always tell IntelliJ, here's what I want. You go write it. So here's where I would go to line 16 and stick in song list as a parameter. And the reason why is that way, again, it's this idea of what does it look like from the caller? What's convenient for the caller? What does the caller want? Because I don't care about what the implementation is. I care about who's calling it and what do they want. And now that we've got red, now we can go ahead and tell IntelliJ, please create that constructor. And in fact, we could then think about, do we want a default constructor?
Actually, is anybody calling the default?
Maybe. We're only calling it here. So if we're only calling it here, I might say, let's just add a parameter.
Yeah, so add first parameter.
Yeah, let's do that. Now we'll have to go manually fix line 11, but if you do an alt enter on the gray song list, it should offer assign to because the parameter was different. So we'll have to do it. We'll actually have to write code. The other option is we could change the variable name to songs, and it might do the work for us. Let's see what happens. Assign parameter. Yeah, that worked. So the third one. There we go.
Now we don't need this.
And now we don't need that, correct. Now
What were you thinking?
No, go ahead, delete line 18. Let's run our tests. What happened?
Oh, they passed.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed
Sorry.
that. I was looking at comments. Yeah, now we can go and delete the setter. And voila. And we could probably...
What are you thinking?
I was thinking we could inline 16, but no, let's leave it. I'm not too upset about that. The other thing we can do, though, is now on line 9, we can actually make songs final. So you can do an alt enter on songs with the caret on songs.
Yeah.
And let's commit. We have completed encapsulating song repository. By removing the setter. Yes, evil setter. So okay, so for some reason people resist moving getters and setters and making the field public. Yeah, like, and I personally go back and forth about this. There are times when that's appropriate, such as DTOs that that Attitude mentioned. And there they literally are just data structures. Where even a record is kind of annoying because records are immutable. And so if you want something that's like a read and write thing, but it's just data and it's just used for request response to the outside world, why not just make the fields public and be done with it?
Be done with it, yeah.
And like not have boilerplate code that you have to update or use a terrible tool like Lombok and things like that. The only downside is that it's often unexpected. And so this is why I struggle with it, because as an educator and coach and so on, I want to provide sort of good examples, but also how far do you drift from what's fairly commonplace is sort of the issue, because whenever you're explaining something or teaching something, you have to connect with what people already know. And if people react badly to it, it may interfere with their learning. If they say, no, that's not the way we do it, or just that looks weird, that might interfere with their learning. And so I generally still create objects with getters and setters, even when it's not really required. The other issue is if you're working with a framework or a library that expects setters and getters, that's where you absolutely need them, because they're using the underlying good old Java Bean specification from 1997, where setters and getters define what the properties are. And so that's another reason why I tend to still default back to using getters and setters for those DTO kinds of objects. And I think it's I have opinions about C#. I feel like a lot of times they do things that learn the wrong lesson. Um, and so one of the things that C# does is it makes it trivial to create getters and setters, which is great for your DTOs, but terrible for your domain objects. And so, um, yeah, I don't know. Do you make it easy to do things when it's or only maybe like 1/2 or 1/4 or 1/10 of your objects? I'm not sure. So, so this is an interesting statement. I don't think DTOs are overused. I think they're used incorrectly, and I know it's a subtle difference. Um, but if you need a DTO, use a DTO. But if you really need behavior, then you shouldn't be using a DTO. Um, so there's a subtle nuance here where it's like you can have a lot of DTOs, and that's totally fine if they are explicitly used as data transfer objects. If you just say every object is a data transfer object, then you have no behavior, in which case, where's your behavior?
It's in a
No.
God class somewhere.
Yeah, or it's in some big God class, or you've taken the approach of I am going to write my code in a much more functional style where I'm going to have just data objects, and all my behavior is going to be in functional, state-free methods. And you can totally do that. You can totally write that code in a language like Java. You're gonna It's gonna be really awkward, but you can totally do it. Um, but I'd question like, why are you doing Java in that case? C# seems to have make that easier. Um, and I know folks, very talented folks who do that. That's not me. I'm a big encapsulated, object-oriented kind of guy. Because you're basically saying, I'm not going to encapsulate my data. I'm not going to combine my data with my behavior. And it's a different style. So, um, so I would actually phrase this as there are too many anemic objects, too many anemic domain models. So where I never want to see a DTO is in my domain model, because if it's truly just data, then it should be a value object and not a DTO, which sometimes looks the same, but it is a very different role. That if there is behavior, it's inside the value object. Otherwise, there is no behavior. So if you've got behavior in one place and data in another, then you're not OO. And I feel like I've been ranting about this a little bit here, but it's to me it's just so important not to like if you're going to program an object-oriented language, then encapsulation is your number one is really your number one goal. Hey Tukes, Happy New Year. So this is an interesting point. Can you bring up in SongRepository the all songs method? So we could, so in fact, list.of or list.copy of, actually both, end up returning what's basically an unmodifiable list. It creates special lists under the covers that don't use array lists, that they're unmodifiable. You try to operate on them, and those if you try to add to them or modify them, those methods will fail, which is actually an additional problem, because if you get a list and you didn't know it was unmodifiable and you try to modify it and it blows up, well, I hope you were test driving that, so you found that out early. But if you didn't find that out until much later, then you've got a problem. And so by returning a stream, we're explicitly telling the caller that they should have no expectations of being able to modify the stuff they get. Streams are by definition read only. In fact, they're read once. Once you've finished the stream, it's gone. You've read it, and I hope you got what you needed from it, because you can't reset the stream. Now, you could immediately take that stream and convert it to a list, but hey, that's on you. You know what you're doing. Hopefully, you have a reason for that. What's at runtime? Creation of the unmodifiable list. Well, you could use collections unmodifiable, but there's no reason to do that because you just use list.copy of. You either way.
I think what they're
Go ahead.
saying is that in both situations, you're not going to find out till runtime.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, because they all implement list, and this is actually a very deep problem in the Java collections classes. Is that there's this unmodifiable thing, but it is not elevated to the abstraction of read-only list or immutable list. There is no such thing in Java standard collections. There is stuff in the immutables library, in the Guava library, in the Eclipse collections library, where there's not just implementations that are immutable, but they are present at the interface, and so you know what to expect. And if we wanted to say, hey, we're going to be using a lot of different collections where it'd be useful to have immutable collections, then I'd say, okay, then great, let's bring in Eclipse collections. And from here, instead of returning a string, we would return an immutable list. Again, that would be fine because that makes it clear to the caller that the caller should have no expectations that they can modify that thing. Yeah, this is why it's bad, is because you won't know at runtime until it throws an unsupported operation exception, which is really just bad. And it shows that there is missing abstractions, but that, as they say, that horse is way out there, long gone. In fact, the horse is dead. It's so far gone.
But from an OO perspective, if an inheritor removes a parent method, that's breaking.
That's just bad for all sorts of reasons. Yes.
Yeah, that's like,
yeah,
it's no longer.
You're lying. And
Yeah,
what's interesting is there is a pattern, the state pattern, that actually kind of requires you to do that, which is why I never really liked the state pattern, at least in Java, because you're basically saying you're in a state where this transition that you want to do, right? So for example, the good old gumball machine example, right? Turn knob. Well, you can't do that because you haven't inserted any money. So you can't do it. So what do? I throw an exception. When you're in the money inserted state, then you can turn the knob and it's fine. But I don't like that because it's a surprise. Right? We don't know until runtime that you can't do that.
Yeah.
So this is a good opportunity for a break. So how long a break do you want?
5 works for
All
me.
right. We'll do a 5-minute break. And then when we come back, time to look at our next step, which might be persistent. So stay tuned for that. All right, and we're back.
Woohoo.
So I think our do you want to take one more look at our song repository?
Yes.
See what's there. So we've got our songs, it's final. We've got a constructor that helps us initialize it. We have a way of getting all the songs. We can add a song.
Do you like static factory methods to be after the constructor or before?
Yeah, I like them to be after the constructor.
But before the others, the non-statics.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm just thinking if we want that constructor to be private. No, let's leave it. Let's actually.
That's the only usage.
Yeah, let's make it private for now. We can always make it public later.
I want to see. Well, let me. It's a lot of steps to just. I could have just typed it.
Yeah, sometimes it's just like, you know what, just modify it.
Yeah.
A slightly faster way would have been to click on the visibility on the public itself.
Oh. What did I do?
You're fine. Just
oh, wait a second. No, it's undoing too much.
You undid just what you needed to do. So redo it, make it final. That's weird. It didn't actually redo it.
I know. That is weird. Is it? Did I just? Okay. One more time. There we go.
There we go.
So you were saying click here?
Yeah. So Alt Enter for that. Yep.
Oh, so it's got the, yeah. That's a little bit faster, but yeah, I probably could have just typed it.
Yeah, it's at a point where it's like, sort of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
So why not go the other way and get rid of the static factory method? I kind of like static factory methods over constructors because it's they tend to proliferate, and therefore I want, like, to me it's just a named constructor, and we'll likely be adding more varieties of these, especially once we get into sort of fakes and things like that. So I tend to prefer static factory methods over constructors. So Kleich or Kleich, not sure how to pronounce that quite, but brings up a point, which is the tragic state of affairs in most code bases that I've seen as well, is really poor encapsulation, both at the class level and at the quote layered level, in that they may look like they have layering, but there's not sufficient boundaries around that. And to me, it's all about boundaries, right? Encapsulation is a boundary around the class. Packages are boundaries around that layer or that part of the layer. And if you're not going to respect the boundaries, you're going to have a hard time. And it's pretty terrible, because mostly it makes it really hard to test.
Yep.
Hey, Sweetie. Happy New Year. Hey, Tom. Nice to see you.
Hey, Tom.
How would you test a static method? Same way you test any other method. Not sure what challenge or issue you're thinking of that makes that not obvious.
I just wanted to emphasize.
Go ahead.
I was say, I want to emphasize one of the big advantages of having static creation methods is, Ted had mentioned it, but I want to emphasize it, is that you can name them, right? Whereas you can't name a constructor.
Right.
And that's very helpful.
I was going to say having static methods, like static methods are generally the easiest methods to test because they require nothing else. Because by definition, well, unless you have static data, in which case you've got deeper problems. Don't do that, please. But if you got a static method, it's generally easiest to test because there's not much else it needs other than what you hand in its parameters. Static factoring methods are generally relatively easy to test because you know what to expect. Yeah. So that's also another terrible way of doing where it's now you've got, so what I was describing is like almost the of like a microservice approach where like nobody can have the actual data. They always have to ask to get that information because there's no way to pass that information along. And if you design it correctly, like with proper boundaries for aggregates, right? So I talk about boundaries, right? There's classes of boundaries. Package is one level. It's actually kind of two levels up. But really like aggregates, which is groups of objects that work together. There you have clearly defined thing that is what you want to refer to as with identifiers, because that's the thing you load and modify from storage. So there it might be appropriate for IDs to be passed around, but if you're constantly retrieving the same stuff, then yeah, there's a clear problem with who's responsible for what. That's just terrible, and I bet your performance sucks. And perhaps made up by caching, but that's just wrong. Cleach. Okay, thank you. I like to try and pronounce names correctly, although with usernames, they're all over the board, and so that may not even be a real name. So, static methods are not thread safe. Well, I generally just don't worry about threading. I got to be honest. I pretty much 99.99% of the time really just don't worry about threading. I let the framework or other stuff do it, where I just make sure I don't have contention, and then I don't have to worry about threading. Obviously, that doesn't always apply, but I just generally, especially when I'm thinking about testing, I generally assume that threading is not going to be an issue. Yes, caching can make up for a lot of sins, but can cause its own problems, right? Because caching is hard. All right. Do we have another Jira to work on, or do we need to come up with our next thing?
I don't know. We'll go take a look. Let's see. Technically, I think we did Jira 29, right?
I think so. Yeah, it's in memory.
Yeah.
It may not be called that, but we'll fix that soon enough. So yeah, so I think we have a choice of creating and storing it in a real database, or we continue adding functionality that's sort of user-facing functionality. So
is that an implicit question?
So if we scroll down, we can see some of the other things we were looking at. Yeah.
Down in this area? Yeah.
Yeah. So adding a song and adding songs via the UI. So we have sort of the what we call the subcutaneous, right? We have our service layer, our application service layer, where we can add songs. And so we sort of have two directions we can push things. One direction is push to the right, if we're thinking about hexagonal, push to the right and write to a database, or push to the left and create the UI. I don't know if you have
leaning towards database side, but I don't really have a strong argument. pro or con for either approach?
So the advantage of delaying the database is if we delay the database, we can not have to commit to a schema and consider database migration. But if we're not thinking that we're going to be adding real data, then that's not a concern either.
In that case, maybe it is better to go up to the UI. It depends on how, because I mean, ultimately there's going to be some complexity to the database. Are you reading a chat?
I'm just looking for a picture. Here we go. That's not quite the picture I want. Where is the picture I want? I'll find out later. Okay. Yeah, since I don't think we're going to be storing real. So the reason why I would be concerned about the database is because right now the properties, the attributes you have for songs, we just got 4 of them. And are we going to add to that? How do we migrate that data? If we do, it's not terribly difficult if we're just adding columns. But at least we'd get more permanent storage. And then really the question is what would that give us? So it's sort of like, think about what do we know the least about and what would sort of teach us the most about what's
the next step.
What's the next step of what's sort of unknown?
Well, from that perspective, then the UI, because they'll start to go through the path of, well, what do we want to display?
Mm-hmm.
What happens if somebody asks for 2 themes? Or even not even ask for 2 themes. What if somebody stores a song with 2 themes?
Well, that brings up the question of right now we don't have sort of a way to add multiple themes.
Right. But if somebody added,
how would they add multiple themes?
2 songs in a row, the exact same song, different
okay.
theme.
Right. So there's some validation stuff that might be interesting. Basically, some constraints on stuff that's added.
Because we do know that there will definitely be multiple themes per song. I have, like in my spreadsheet, I have up to 4 or 5.
Right. So in that case, we're
max.
actually missing some functionality, or at least missing some. Yeah, we're missing some functionality.
Right.
So test containers are specifically for testing. You would not use test containers for running the application, even if you're running it locally on dev. You would use a Docker compose to bring up a database. But test containers are generally for, as the name says, containers that are started automatically when a test executes and then shut down automatically for you. So they're not generally used for local environment. So Wally asks an interesting question, which is, where do you put a piece of code that might be used by 2 services? In general, so static methods are bad because it makes testing harder. So if you're using common code that calls a static method, and then you want to be able to test something, but that static method is doing something that you want to substitute for with a test double, you can't really do it. Well, you can, but you really don't want to, because it would require to use a tool that we will not really want to use. So in general, shared code should be injected just like any other dependency. That way it's replaceable. So if you need code that's shared by multiple services, pass it into the constructor and have it depend on it just like it does anything else. Static method calls are the tightest form of coupling that Java has, and that makes it really, 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 really difficult to work with. I know one company that I've done some work with. It is at least one. It is the bane of their existence, and they are spending lots and lots of effort to dig themselves out of static method dependencies. That's actually not true, full nuffle. So test containers are is, if you look at what the Spring Boot team says, is test containers are specifically for testing. They may run in your local environment, but they are explicitly for testing. If you want containers to run when you run your application, that's what the Docker Compose support is about. And they made that really clear, that's the separation they want. If you've seen something different, I'd like to see it, because I'd like to. That's my understanding from the Spring Boot, the Spring team. Yes, so it's really about what is the static method being used for. If it's to create something, that's fine. But if it's being used sort of during runtime as a library of some sort, as shared code, that's where you get into trouble. Yeah. So do we want to write the UI, or do we want to actually modify our current use case layer to accept multiple themes per song?
Yeah, I think the multiple themes.
All
But I
right.
think they will definitely, well, since my spreadsheet of songs has,
Right.
unfortunately, they're done as well, not unfortunately, but they're currently done as columns, which of course we probably don't want to store it in a database that way. Yeah, I didn't think so.
That's why we normalize our tables. That's why
Yeah,
I have join
exactly.
tables. Yes.
Yeah. So it is a fairly common, or it's going to be a fairly common occurrence. So yeah. So now we're back to subcutaneous, because we could build that out from that and then do the UI for it at a later point.
Right.
I think that's where you were going, right?
Yeah, that's so basically, do we have an understanding, right? Can we go just more subcutaneous? Can we go more against the application layer? Do we know what that's going to look like? Is the UI just going to have, so is the UI going to just support multiple theme entry? And we've talked about that a bit, about what that might look like you have there on line 52.
Yeah.
And so if we just assume that there's some way that will do that, where you can just tack on multiple themes, and basically will come in as strings, because we talked about sort of theme management. But if we're not going to worry about sort of upfront theme management, then at least right now, then I think we know exactly what we need from our application layer.
Yeah.
So Suiji brings up a good point, which I think you've already stated, but basically, would this app be useful if you couldn't support multiple themes?
Yes. But then you would have multiple entries for the exact same song.
Well, no, that's.
Is it like, so how could it prohibit it if it said add song with theme A, and then an hour later I add the same song but with a different theme? It's just going to think of it as a new. Well, it
Right.
just depends how it's implemented, but yeah.
Okay, but my question was, because that would still require, let's put it this way: is that the way you'd want to use it? Would you be happy with that?
No.
Right. That's what I'm getting at. It's like you're by basically saying you're going to work around the fact that it doesn't innately support multiple themes by entering a song multiple times with different themes. To me, that says you really need multiple themes. Otherwise, it's not very useful.
I was more saying that that's how you could, if we didn't support it, that's how users would behave.
Right.
right? They would just
right.
start.
But my question was more like, would you really use it? Would it be would it be an MVP? Would it be something that you'd be happy, assuming the stored stuff in databases and the UI was there? Would you find that useful, or would you be like, I can't use this yet until it supports multiple themes? Because it's your app.
Yeah, I mean, I could use it, but it would be nicer to, especially with the bulk entry, to be able to just sploot it all in and be done with it.
Okay, so it sounds like we really need multiple themes.
Right.
So I think that's our next Jira.
Line 32.
Sure.
I was just mimicking this, right?
Yeah. Minimum level product. I love that cliche.
Ah, that is awesome.
So this is the advantage of not committing to tables yet. I don't know how we're going to store this in the database. Likely we will have multiple tables, but I don't have to think about that because we haven't done anything with databases yet.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the advantages of kicking the database can down the road.
Yes.
Is,
Yeah, Yagni is a great tool for saying, do we have to worry about that yet? Nope. So let's not. So what are our steps here? So add a song with multiple themes. Is there anything else we need to say?
to it? I don't think so.
So I guess that's our Jira.
Yep. Well, you know what? Yeah, I guess I'll just make it no, not what I meant.
So field sample says a table with a single row and a string column, store JSON in the column solve. Absolutely. We could totally do that. And that is certainly even reasonable considering that we don't use the database for searching, just for persistence. And so, yeah.
Now, if we wanted to shift to using the database for searching, like for some reason we get a gazillion entries, have we boxed ourselves into a corner?
No, it's easy to migrate. It's relatively, easy. It's relatively straightforward to migrate.
Yeah.
And even if it's not straightforward to do it from a pure SQL, you could always do the read write, the dual read, dual write, or dual. I guess it's dual read, sort of upgrade on the fly, or you could just run some code to migrate. You only have to really worry about that stuff if you've got multiple apps talking to the same, either multiple instances of an app or multiple apps talking to the same database, in which case you'd have to make sure that everybody's reading the database the way it should be read.
There's a lot of chat today.
Yeah. Is there one too many? Yeah. Yeah, Alwali, I definitely prefer server-side generated user interfaces over separate front-end or what are called single-page applications. Most of the time, you just don't need that complexity. The way of developing is very different, but in a good way, because you have all the control on all the generation of the UI in the same place as the code that is storing and retrieving and running all of its business rules. All right. So I think that's our next step. So what do we need to do for that?
Write a test.
All right. So which tests are we going to write?
So do we do this? Sorry, go.
I was just going to say, so this doesn't require an endpoint change, right? So if we look at our controller, our song themes controller, it's still searching for one theme, which
Right.
so that doesn't change. And we don't currently have an endpoint for creating, so there's nothing to change there.
Right.
The advantage of Yagni is the advantage of procrastination is we don't have to undo anything or modify anything we already did. So our controller's fine. There's nothing to do there, and so now we can look at our application layer, which is our song service, and it has just an add song. So do we now need to split song, or does song inherently, as an entity, as a domain entity, have multiple themes?
We haven't. Yeah. Right now, it's just a theme and a title.
Right.
In other words, turn song into a class that has like a list of themes. In other words,
Yeah.
no longer make it a record.
Right. So basically, well, song could still be a record, but instead of theme being a string, um, it could simply be a list of string.
Hmm.
And also, sort of a related but separate question is: do we want to promote theme to a value object at this point?
We will eventually, and is eventually now.
Yeah, I don't
Like,
feel like it is. I'm just sort of bringing it up.
yeah, yeah.
So Dana asks, we're thinking adding one theme at once. Now the idea is for a song, you can add one or more themes that are for that song.
Little UI sketch of how to do the theme part.
Yeah.
Where you could put in multiple themes for one song.
That could be an optimization. So Dotatis is start with a theme and then add a bunch of songs for that theme. That could be a data entry optimization, but I think
Yes.
that's just an optimization. Ultimately, on the back end, it's going to be each song has one or more themes. Spinner64 asks, are we doing BDD, TDD, or ATDD? I don't use the term ATDD very, very much. And whether we're doing BDD or TDD is yes.
I haven't heard ATDD in a long time.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically an acceptance test driven development. And what an acceptance test is versus BDD, which is behavior driven. Sometimes people treat that as the same. I see them as definitely different. So you could say, and it's not, you're usually doing multiple of these, right? You're doing ATDD at the outside. In a sense, that's what we're thinking about right now. Is we already have you can enter a song with a single theme. Now we want to be able to support adding a song that has more than one theme. So that's behavior that's visible from the outside. And whether you call that BDD or ATDD, we don't have a test yet for that. But to me, it's all kind of TDD. Basically, you know what you want it to do, then you write a test and then make it do that. And yes, we definitely are doing Jira-driven development.
Or SD, yeah.
So Suiji asks, how many themes do you have in the spreadsheet? I think our cardinality is probably certainly under 10. I don't think you had more than like 4 or 5 columns.
Yeah, I think the most I have is 5 columns.
Yeah.
And number of themes. this isn't even complete. Because remember that there's the spreadsheet, there's Word docs, there's ASCII docs. I don't think there's any stickies or post-it notes, but
Yeah. But you know, we're
I can
talking
see at
certainly
least
just a 10 or under number of themes per song.
yes, and I
Yeah.
definitely see at this point just in the spreadsheet there's probably 40 themes. When I
Right.
pull in the
But we
other
don't.
areas, we
Yeah.
don't
So
need that. I know.
we
He was
yeah
asking cardinality. I know.
yeah yeah.
No,
So I mean the number of themes would be important if we had something like a million or something that we had to worry about
yeah.
it. So I don't call it the Chicago style. I call it the Detroit style because that's where Ron Jeffries and Kent Beck and so on. I don't like the fact that Chicago has co-opted what was just invented in Detroit. So it's the Detroit style or the Kent Beck style, or classical. Yeah. So Canon TDD, which is Kent Beck, just basically said, just to be sure everybody knows what I'm talking about, this is Canon TDD. And the only real difference between what Kent Beck wrote and what we've been kind of doing is we haven't been writing much of a list of tests we're going to write. I have done it occasionally, but I don't tend to write much in that way. I've been assured though that still falls under canon. But it's really there is no difference between that, what he wrote, and what he wrote in his book 20 years ago. He's just basically saying, for those people who likely have not read the book, this is what I mean by TDD. Stockholm syndrome, TDD. There are a bunch of different styles, so it has gotten a bit out of hand. There are several other location-based things, and that starts to get into like some differences that actually are important, but I don't think we want to get into that here. But yeah, none of them tell you need a translation table. What do you exactly mean by this? And there's some articles about that. All right. So coming back to song, when we add a song, do we care that, I guess when we get a song, so here's where we have to sort of think about what is this song record used for? When we display the song after searching, we basically display the song. We display these two pieces. In fact, I believe we even have a song view. Oh, we aren't displaying the themes. So do we want to? So when if you search for a theme and you find the songs, do you need to show the theme for every song?
This will be I'm going to kick the can down the road, because if you just searching by one theme, then you don't need it.
Right.
But the TBD is if somebody is searching for Christmas and Halloween,
Right.
do they want both or the intersection of the two?
Right.
Which is pretty much just a Burton movie, basically. I know there's probably more than that, but you know what I'm saying, right? And so that is unclear. What would people want? Would they want both list of all Christmas songs and Halloween, or do they want ones where there literally is a song that's about Christmas and Halloween, right? So they just want that one song.
Right.
And that's the part I'm not sure what people want. So at this point, I feel like it's
I don't care what people want. I care what you want.
Well, I have never searched for a double theme at this point.
Okay. I'm gonna say that we probably want to easily associate the themes with a song, because that feels useful. And if we find out not, and there's something that pushes us to a different direction, then we can figure that out at that point. But I feel like we want to continue having a song be include the theme as sort of part of that object.
Yeah.
So that means we're going to have to migrate from song taking a single theme to a song taking one or more themes.
Right. Which might take a little bit of work.
It might.
Maybe we can refactor to it.
Yeah, we might do some prepare refactor for that. And so Durham says, doing a great job learning more about IntelliJ. Great. Thank you. Thanks for hanging out. So let's drive it in from the test side, and then that might inform us of how we might want to refactor this.
At what level? Service level?
Yes. So we want to sort of start from the outermost layer. And here's where I could use a diagram.
You're gonna pull one up?
I'm gonna pull one up. Yeah. So let me. So what we got here is our hexagon, and so inside here are things like song, as well as things like song searcher. But we also have at sort of what you might consider a different layer, we've got our song service. I'll sort of flip it. I'll flip it this way. So it's sort of, this is, when we're talking subcutaneous, we're basically referring to this thing. And so we want to figure out how do things want to talk to it. And so what are the things that are going to talk to it are basically our adapters. And so right now we've got our web adapter, which is our so we've got our adapter. We haven't finished this. We don't need to finish this because we basically know what this connection is going to be. We know what is the adapter going to need from the song service. And from a data entry standpoint, the song service right now has a method where we say add a song. And yeah, and so when we're testing, they're basically the two levels that we're testing against. We're testing at this level, and we've got tests at basically this level. And so they're, and I use the word level, but really they're layers, because there's basically you want to think about this as being another layer. This is our domain layer. And so we're testing against that. So I've got tests here, put those in green. And we've got tests here. Like that. So these are our use case layer tests. Oops. Sometimes people call these integration tests. I don't do that because I find that a confusing term. And then these are layer tests. So that's kind of our structure. And so what we want to do is when we're developing new functionality, we want to go outside in. So that's why we do this one first, and then this one second. And so that's where it's sort of outside in, because we're starting at the outer layer, and then we're looking at the inner layer. And we may bounce around, but that's the basic idea. So, and this is also called subcutaneous. It's just below this the skin, and it's kind of this. What does it look like from the outside? Users will actually interact with it at this level. So that's our architecture.
Nice.
So let's go back to your code. So what do we have? What do we have at this layer? We've got. Do you want to bring up just the full list? Yeah. So we've got save songs are loaded. So we've got stuff around saving and loading. We made sure they're saved to the repository. And when we add songs, they're found by their theme. Let's take a look at that one, the second one. Yeah, so that's exactly right. So the idea is that none of these tests, right? There may be tests that we want out here, but that's a separate issue. But none of these tests even are aware of the idea of HTTP. That's long gone. That's handled only here. This is the place that deals with HTTP. Once you get to this connection right here, this dependency right here, now we're talking just code. No network, no nothing.
Which means it can be screamingly fast.
Yes, and that's the main goal of most of our tests is that we want these to be really fast. And that's why these are IO. So what are we doing here with this song service? We add a song, and then search. So so I think we should. Do we want to create another test?
Like multiple songs with multiple themes? Or
yeah. Or do we want to modify this test where one of the songs we add has multiple themes?
well, yeah, this is about repository. That's about loading its startup. I think we could do that. So if we make the second song a different theme, well, we want it to be the same song.
Yeah, I think that's
two
going to get
themes.
confusing. So let's write another test because
Yeah.
as you said that what we're testing is that they're found by their theme, and now it has multiple themes. I feel like that's a separate test now.
Right. And just to be clear, we're doing Jira 23. Add a song with multiple. Sorry, 32.
Yeah, add us. So there's actually a little bit more baked into that. Yeah, there's songs with multiple themes, so we want to be able to find a song, and then so finding and adding, I think, are two separate things. So we want to be able to add a song that has multiple themes, and we want to be able to find a song if one of its themes matches. Right. Yeah, it's likely that there's a schema out there somewhere, but we're writing a bespoke application, so we get to decide what's important to us. Yeah, this does not surprise me. There's lots of good schemas for stuff.
Yeah.
And I generally look at this kind of stuff to help inform what I might want to consider and perhaps naming of things. But we want just what we need. So I don't know that we can implement add without find already working. In the sense that I don't know.
Oh, if it succeeded.
Well, we can certainly do a prepare. But if we actually added a song with theme 1 and theme 2, and pretended that it was only theme 1, without modifying the search by theme to look across both themes, we could never tell that adding that song actually worked.
Right.
So I think we're going to need to find a song that has find a song if one of its themes matches. One of its themes match? One of its theme matches? Match, yeah. Verb tenses. I think we're going to want to do that one first.
So we're going to have to manually manufacture some data that without using add to make sure we have a song with multiple themes.
Right.
Right.
So let's do that. Let's go to our
what were you going to say?
Yeah, let's go to our song service test. And I think we just write another test where a song has multiple themes and is found by the second theme.
Oh, right, because if we change new song on 17 or make a line like line 17, where instead of it accepting New Year's, it accepts a list which includes New Year's. Right. So we might have to do, no? Yeah, I guess we'll find out pretty quickly whether we'll need to do parallel change or what on this one.
We'll be able to do a parallel change.
Okay. New test.
Song with multiple themes is found by all themes.
By all themes?
I want to say by any of the themes that it has. So that's what I'm saying by all. Well, that's what I mean by all themes. By anything.
Is any okay?
Sure.
Any of those themes?
Yes.
I mean, I don't really know. I can't think of a better way of phrasing.
Yeah. So song with multiple themes is found by any of the. That's fine.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's good enough.
But yeah, good enough. I hear it's easy to change test method names. Okay.
Yeah, you don't even have to refactor.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and
bring that into view a little bit.
So we're going to do something very much like that, except instead of 2 songs, we're just going to add 1, but it's going to have multiple themes.
Yeah. I hesitate to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. This will actually be set up.
Yes.
So at this point, we're going to be, so if we do like, we do list stuff here.
We can do whatever we want here. It won't compile, but we can do whatever we want.
Work? Does .arg work?
Of course.
Oh, cool.
So what are
Oh,
go ahead and
does it not
hit
load?
enter because you didn't finish the
Oh, yeah, yeah.
completion. Yeah. So what would another theme be for this song? Or
Yeah, I don't want to use this song. I'm gonna get a new
or
one.
use another song where this is one of only one of the multiple themes.
Yeah, let me send something with multiple themes and just go from there.
And that would be terrible OA. Not that it never happens for good reason, but that's why I kind of, even for test method names, I tend to just do rename.
Song. Okay, that's easy.
Oh, okay. Because at first
Right.
I'm like, that has nothing to do with New Year's.
No, I was moving away from that.
Yeah, okay.
In some ways, it's a canonical example. Not canonical, but
Common. Yeah.
common. There's something wrong with the syntax, aren't I?
Well, we said that was going to happen.
Oh, right. Because we didn't change.
Yeah.
Well, we made. Oh, it's a record.
Right.
So we can't do it. It's not an object, so we can't make a second constructor that takes a list.
No,
we could convert the record to its class.
We can also create a static factory method that's allowed inside of record.
Oh, that's sweet. Okay.
I'm not sure if IntelliJ will support us doing that.
Yeah,
so let's find out. Yeah, none of those are what we want.
We have to manually do it from here?
We will probably have to manually do it, yes.
You want to try something else before we do that?
I think we should probably do a prepare refactoring to prepare us for this. Since now we know what it's going to look like, there's no reason, not no reason. I was thinking of do we want var args? Var args with records are not a good mix. So I think we might make a convenience method for a song with one theme, but that would only be for testing anyway. So I think it's pretty clear we want our song record to be a list of string and not an individual string. So let's actually comment out the test because it doesn't compile. So we're just going to comment it out. We need to comment the annotation as well.
Oops. Test.
Yeah.
It's a special kind of test.
And let's let's see who's calling songs. So let's look at all the callers for the song record. Who's calling
from
that?
Here?
Yeah.
Gonna be big.
No, that's not what we want. We want only the constructors for that.
Is there a way to we don't want to see imports. Turn that off. Does this give us anything?
Can we just look for usages of methods? Would that help?
Like that?
Yeah.
Changing the scope?
No, just do find. That's better.
Yeah.
But not any less.
Well, if we did case, it wouldn't look for this one then. Does this have a case specific?
No,
think
but
it
the
does.
problem is this: there's still a bunch of places where we're instantiating song. So I think let's see if IntelliJ will allow us to do a change signature
On song?
on song. Yeah. Yeah. So let's
Says it
do,
will.
well,
We don't
let's
know
see what
yet.
that actually turns out to be. So let's modify theme. Do you want to do that?
Or what if we add the list of and then
No, because what I'm hoping that we can do, and I don't know if change
Oh.
signature will be the right tool for that, is change the type of theme to be list of string instead of string.
and have the colors all fix automatically.
Yeah, I don't know if they will though, but let's see what happens. So let's before we do this, since we're sort of going to spike our refactoring, our prepare refactoring, let's do a commit and make sure that we're in good shape.
I don't know. I can't think of.
Yeah.
Enough?
Okay. Yeah. We might want to say what prepare refactoring we're doing of
Right.
song with multiple themes.
Okay. And I feel like we haven't run tests in a while, so
yeah, let's run all of them. They don't take that long.
Yeah.
Hey, Xnammer. Yeah, so I saw Suiji posted a link to IO free and what I mean by that in there. But the short answer is if it doesn't touch hardware, right, doesn't read files, doesn't read from IO, doesn't deal with HTTP, doesn't deal with messaging, you can guarantee that those tests are going to be fast because the only thing that slows things down is IO. If it's running in memory, it runs super fast.
And one of the advantages of fast is you're not nervous about running tests. You're not like, oh, I can't run tests. I don't have time for a coffee break right now. Whereas if you just keep running them all the time.
Yep. And speaking of coffee, thank you for the Caffeinate Binary 64.
So prepare refactoring.
I'm just curious. I don't think change signature is going to help us, but I'm just curious to try it. So let's try change signature. And so let's modify theme. Instead of string, it'll be list of string. And make sure you import the list. So Alt Enter.
Alt Enter. You can do it from there. Whoa.
Yes.
That's cool.
I don't know why it didn't auto import it.
Interesting.
But whatever.
Whoa.
Oh, what are all those choices? That's weird. Well, close that window. I'm not sure why that popped up. Do Alt Enter again. Why is it showing all these options?
Jakarta. Is that the one we want? The first one?
Yeah, I don't know why it's showing all those other options. But yeah, you want the first one. And let's change the name to themes. I know we're kind of doing two things at once, but let's see what happens.
Going for broke.
I expect that
Yeah, no, look at
broke
this.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Look at all the red in the gutter.
Yep.
Blood in the streets.
So let's undo that.
Yep.
And let's go back. So I think let's have IntelliJ create this basically expose the canonical constructor.
Does that mean like turn it from a record to a class, or and then turn it back to a record? Or are you saying...
That's one way of doing it. You can also, I think, if you do an alt enter on song itself, on there. Oh, it doesn't offer it as an option.
Do you think the change signature would work if it was a class instead of a record?
Well, if it's a class, I mean, we could do this with a record as well. It's just not going to write the constructor for us. We'd have to write it. What we basically want to end up with, it might just be easier with turning it into a class.
Oop, Sweetie just said alt insert in the body should do it.
Oh, let's try that. Sure, generate the constructor. We want the canonical one because we've already got the compact one. Why are those windows so small? That's so weird. Okay. And
do you think... Oh, interesting, it's redundant. But if we change signature on this...
Yes, so if we basically change, well, the thing is we don't want to change, we actually want to change the component. So let's go do it. Let's just change, let's change string theme to just be a list of string without going through the change signature.
At this point?
No, not that one, on the record itself.
On the record itself, okay. So
technically that is called the record component. So we are changing the record component. You can't do arg on that because it's not an argument.
Yeah.
It would be nice if we could do that, but it's not.
Yeah.
And now, other than the problem with line 7, which is going to be very easy to fix, right? So we just do on the right side of that assignment, we say list of theme. And there you can use the .arg. Yep.
Ooh, what's that?
Yeah, so that's saying a non-canonical record constructor must delegate to that constructor. Do we say, can we not do it through the assignment? Do we just do this? So let's do, is it going to offer anything to fix with alt enter?
No, let me get it back there. I think the cursor jumped.
That's weird. What did it do before? Because I thought I saw. So
I think I was over here somewhere else. Let me try it from here.
No. Go back to song again. The one with red. And not alt insert, but alt enter. I saw something where it was going to assign a new array list to theme.
I think that was... No. Well, then we could do instant replay of the video. The presentation assistant is showing the keystrokes I'm doing.
Yeah, but it was where the cursor was that mattered.
Yeah, that matters.
This is where it gets confusing to me with records. So we've got...
There it is.
Oh, there it is.
I had the cursor on the word theme on line 7.
Oh, but that's not going to help us. That's actually not We could do that. I don't think it's going to make a difference. Just try it out, see what happens.
Which one?
There's only
thing?
one option.
Oh.
Yeah, so that doesn't really do anything for us. It does do the right thing because no, actually it doesn't matter. Undo that. So can we just not, I don't understand. Because it's a non-canonical constructor, it can't differentiate between the two?
Or with records, once you create.
Do we need to call this? Is that what it's saying by not delegating?
Meaning like.
Yeah. So what if we do this and pass in, no, not dot.
Oh, right.
But this, and then say list of theme. And title. And then delete 7 and 8. That's really interesting because why is that? I guess because we fully filled out the, I don't know. That's an interesting aspect of records that I'm confused about why there is a difference between that. It must be just basically a rule about records that you can't do the assignment to the components directly.
I guess if we did it as a class and then convert it to a record.
Yeah, it would probably be more clear. Although we may not be able to then convert it back to a record successfully. So.
Right.
But it's interesting. I didn't think that assigning the components directly was a problem because we were using the correct types. But clearly that records don't like that. All right.
Do you want that blank line on 6?
What's that?
Do you want the blank line on 6? Usually in classes you like it, but at records I was going to ask what you do.
Yeah, records I feel like for something like that it's I actually don't have an opinion. But if you're going to put that space, then you got to put a space on the other side as well, because then it feels unbalanced.
You mean at 8.5?
Yes.
Got it.
So does this do what we want? Let's run the IO free tests. Right, because theme is now a different component type.
Right. Of course, we broke a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and this is actually the crux of the problem of multiple themes is how, in a sense, do we index them? Because what this constructor is basically doing is indexing songs by the one theme.
Right.
Yeah, so Suiji mentions we could just, if this is a true prepare refactoring, then we could just do .first, which will return the first theme in that list, and that should be backwards compatible. But it does mean that this is where we're going to have to do some non-trivial fixes. So let's do that. So right where you were. Just put a .first there.
Oh, there. Oh.
Yeah.
Is it .first?
No, it's get first.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Can you do an F1 on the get first? That's part of the sequential. Why is it not showing help?
Separate window.
Sorry, then I didn't want F1.
Oh, okay.
It must be a different keystroke on Windows. Control Q.
Control Q. Yeah, that's a new one. Oh, quick documentation.
Why did they do that? I think I remember reading this in the JEP when they introduced sequential collections, and I was very puzzled why they put a get in front of it instead of it just being dot first, which is what I'd naturally think of it as. Oh well, it is what it is.
Yep.
So let's run our tests again. All right. So
Really?
our prepare is done, because all we've done is basically said, instead of having a single theme as a string, we have a collection and we only look at the first one. So the behavior is completely the same. The structure is now different. And so I think that is our prepare refactoring.
But we're still going to have lots of songs that are passing in a single theme that will have to be changed to take up the
No,
list. No?
no, because we've created a constructor that's backwards compatible.
Oh,
Right. So that was the constructor. So now we have two constructors, one that takes just one. And I think we'll keep that, because for our tests, if we only need one, that's fine. And then if we need multiple, then we can explicitly add multiple.
okay. It's the record syntax. That's probably why I kept saying, I want to see the class.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can go ahead and convert it to a class and take a look and then undo it.
Yeah. No, now I get it.
Yeah.
But let me do it anyways, just because it might not be is it,
It was alt enter.
was it alt enter?
Yeah. Convert record to class.
Ah, there it is.
Yeah. So now you see they're basically two
Constructors.
But the record was clearly more compact.
And this one's
so
delegating.
Here yeah, I mean, it's basically
This one's delegating to that
this
one.
one's delegating to that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically the one that's backwards compatible is delegating to the new one.
Which is as it should be, right?
Which is as it should be. Yes. The full constructor is always the one that is the sort of the true constructor.
Undo.
Yes. So the Pig Cat 76, I love that name, asks why use a list over what I'm presuming you're saying var args, and because var args with records don't play well together, because you define the record components also become the accessors, and it's just really ugly. Plus, we really don't want to use arrays if we can get away with it, because we actually do want to store the stuff as lists. So arrays, you may not have seen it, but we've already sort of bumped up against the annoyance of arrays. So that's why. How much more do we want to go today?
We kind of blew past our original end time. Let me just see if there's any.
Well, I don't know that we had an end time today. We had a start time.
Oh, we did. I guess. Yeah, I guess mentally I was thinking 2 hours. Let me just quickly check to see if the world is burning down or not. Meaning, if there's any text messages that are like, "Hey, where'd you go?" Let me just check the email too. Yes. Now I probably could go another 15.
Okay. I was just wondering if we want to take a break or not. So if we're only going to go another 15, then we'll just do that.
That's what I think.
All right. But we got our prepare refactoring. All our tests pass. So let's go ahead and do commit.
If only the cursor was on the right window.
That's useful.
Yeah, sometimes. Actually,
so I think we can just say that Song now accepts multiple themes. But only the first one is used.
Ship it.
Yep. So now we can go and uncomment the test, and it should at least compile. That's great. And let's finish writing the test.
So we've added the song. I would know how to do a search by theme. And we want to do any, so we could just pick one.
Mm-hmm. I think we can be more specific and say that we want not the first theme.
I mean, in the title.
Yeah.
Song with multiple themes is found.
I think we can say maybe by its second theme. Yeah. Right, because we know that finding it by its first theme, we know that already works.
Right.
The previous test is basically testing that.
Yeah.
This one, we basically want to find it by its second theme. And since you punched that in already as our search by, let's assert.
Actually, let me use that cool new thing we got.
AST. In fact, this one you could say ACE. I don't know. I forget. We didn't create that shortcut for you.
I don't think we did. Yeah.
Yeah. So ACE is basically assert that something contains exactly.
Ah.
That's what I use because I do that a lot.
Now,
and this is annoying. What I would actually say is so we could basically just instantiate the song the same way it did on 30, and that should just work. I don't like that because
it
feels weird, but really what we're interested in is that the title that we get matches. But we could start with just instantiating the same song, and then or we could map it to just get the title out.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you that this is ugly, doing the same thing as on 30. What would the mapping look like?
So instead of contains exactly, we would say extracting. Yep. And it would be song : title.
Ah.
And then we would say contains exactly, and then Nightmare Before Christmas. Hey there, Falonsha, welcome. And yes, I think I agree, Suiji. Themes always felt like it should be last anyway. Somehow it ended up being first. But now certainly that it takes multiple values, it really does feel like it needs to be last.
Yeah.
Luckily, that's an easy refactoring.
Yes.
All right.
Should fail. Because we're still, I don't know what the code is. I believe we're just looking at the first one in all situations.
We're just looking at the first one, so it's just going to be empty. So it's going to be empty. So we're not going to find any songs instead of the one we want. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
So now we got to fix it. So let's find the code that's basically doing the indexing, which was the songs, the song was in the song searcher, right?
I think so.
Because this just delegates. So what's interesting is this test might be at the wrong layer.
Level, yeah. Like we're too far away.
It's fine for now, but I think once it passes, I think we could probably just push it closer. But the reason why we start here is we don't necessarily know exactly what might be required. Yes, exactly. It's like, no, that's just the wrong order. It took forever for me to fix that. I don't know why. That's an inside joke for those of you who was like, what is he talking about? For the longest time in a blackjack game we're working on, the definition of a card was suit first and then rank. But whenever I talk about cards, I always say, you don't say hearts ace, you say ace of hearts, you say 3 of clubs, 2 of spades. And so being backwards is just terrible. So where do we actually do the indexing is in Song Searcher's constructor, right? That's where that grouping by thing is. Yeah. So in fact, I feel like we actually might want to pull this out into its own method called index songs by theme, because right now it's not obvious what that does.
Right, completely. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's do that, and then even though it's basically the entire thing, let's do that.
You just told me what I must be tired. That means we have to stop soon. What was the name you gave for the method again?
Index songs by theme or by themes, even though right now it only does singular.
Yeah.
So
Prepare refactoring.
So now, actually undo that. Let's extract it in a better way.
Okay.
Let's pull out line 13 into a local variable.
Oh no.
So here you're gonna have to select the line and then extract it to a variable. And we're gonna call that song stream, or sure, song stream.
One more time.
Yeah.
There we go.
Now extract, let's see. Let's actually just extract from, basically this is stream operation. So 14 on, so 14 to 17.
Like that?
Yeah, because that actually returns a map.
Returns a what? A map?
Yeah, so let's extract that.
Even with the semicolon at the end?
Yeah.
Okay. Extract to variable.
Oh,
right?
sorry. Just click. Yeah, well, actually without the semicolon and without the final paren. So sorry. So put your cursor on song stream and then just extract method, and we'll figure out what it asks us.
Oh, extract method. Okay.
Yeah. So we want with the collect, so the second one. Yep. There we go. And this is index songs by theme. Yep. Yeah, that's much better. So we can see that on 17, basically, you give it a stream and it gives you a map. I don't know how we would do this with streams. because we'd have to flatten the themes, but I don't know how that would work with the grouping by. So let's ask IntelliJ to convert that to for loops for us old timers.
Convert which part? This?
The entire song stream collect. You might have to go to song stream itself. Does it not know how to convert it for us? It may not know how to convert it to some kind of looping thing. That would be a shame.
Could do. You think that would?
I don't know. You could try. No, that's a bummer. I think we should stop here.
Yep. We have been going for a while. Flatten it into, Sweegie.
Yeah, there's a way we need to, in a sense, flatten song into multiple songs with single themes and then index by that and group by that. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but it's going to be a bunch of trial and error that probably require fresher brains than at least
we've been going for a while.
We have, yeah.
Yeah.
So so this is fine. We'll stop here. We've got a failing test, and it's failing for the right reason. And so we'll pick it up next time with figuring out how to better do how to index by multiple themes.
Cool. Are there more comments that we need to?
No, I think we're good. Yep.
It sounds like a tomorrow problem.
Yes. Yes, that's definitely a tomorrow problem.
Stop sharing my screen.
Yep. All right. Any final words before we bid adieu?
I think I need to commit. Is there anything left to commit? There is. So let me do that without sitting on my machine.
Yeah, you'd be committing a failing test, but I'm fine with that. As long as you don't push it.
Right.
Even if you pushed it, it wouldn't be a problem because it's just a failing test.
Right. Trying.
I mean, I'd be fine if you didn't commit at all. I don't think that's
really.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, that's all, folks. Our next stream, we haven't figured out a specific time, but it will be soon. So stay tuned for that. And as always, Discord has the most up-to-date information on future streams, as well as a whole bunch of other good stuff. So if you're not already there, drop by, join up and say hello. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.
I think we can say it'll be tomorrow, right? We do know that much.
We're pretty sure it's tomorrow. Okay, it's pretty sure it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Have a good one. See you tomorrow.
Bye.